Hello, gentle listener, and thank you for tuning in to Hex Radio, the only radio broadcast 100% guaranteed to get you haunted by spirits. I'm Echo, the Hex Maniac who puts the Hex in Hex Radio, and I'm very pleased to have you joining me tonight. This is going to be an excellent show, and not just because it involves an arts and crafts project. Last week I received a couple of questions from you, and I've been very excited to have the chance to answer them. After all, it's always a good night when I don't have to think too hard about what I need to do for the next show. Between getting my things prepared, typing up the points I want to hit, and making the trek out into the woods to find this radio tower, I need all the shortcuts I can take. Besides, the subjects I'm about to cover are ones that are very important to me, and I'm always happy to offer advice when I can. The first question I received was, why do adults feel the need to put labels on sexuality? And I honestly feel that it's a very good question. Why do we want to put labels on everything? Well, for the most part, it boils down to the fact that the human brain is only designed to actually care about and have empathy for a certain amount of people. Humans were never meant to live in dense populations the way we do today. We were meant to be spread about in clans and tribes, small groups of people, so that we could easily know every single one of them. As our groups got larger, the need for labels increased. These people are my family. I care about them. And then suddenly those people are all grouped together in your mind as one entity. Your family. Your tribe is another entity. Your country another. It's easier for your mind to say, these people are like me, so I care about them. Of course, the opposite is also true. These people are not like me. They do not care about the things I care about. I do not care about them. They are not even people to me. And so we need to label absolutely everything. The more categories, the more people you can cram into them. The more you can think of as actual people. However, the more categories, the more people who don't fit into the ones you identify with. The more other they become, the less like people they might seem to you. It's really not ideal at all, but unfortunately it's how the human brain is designed. For some reason, gender and sexuality seem to matter the most to humans, and we've been trying to make nice little boxes to sort people into for generations. However, since gender and sex rely on people's definitions and aren't as cut and dry as who your family is and where you're from, they're much harder to actually fully sort out. Using myself for an example, if I were absolutely forced to pick a label for myself, I would pick asexual. I just don't really find anyone attractive in that kind of way, though that isn't to say I don't find people attractive. I do tend to think women are a lot better looking than men, and I tend to get flustered and tongue-tied around them. I just don't feel that kind of sexual attraction for them. And yet, I'm married to Orion, a man, and we are very happy together. We do everything you would expect from a married couple. If you keep pressuring me, I would say that I'm probably a romantic. I've never really felt an urge to date people, to kiss them, to do anything of that kind. And yet, again, I'm married to Orion, and we go on dates, and I hold his hand, and we're both very happy. If you keep pressing and pushing at me, I would say that I identify as a gender. I've never felt particularly feminine nor masculine, And at times, I actually get very dysphoric about my body not being the way I feel inside. But I like to have long nails and hair, and I generally dress and look like every other woman you've seen. Humans are messy. We love labels and boxes, neat, organized groups. But we also love to defy those labels we put on ourselves. It's just how human nature is. It's also human nature to want to change your labels all the time. It's perfectly fine to be one thing for a while and then decide you're another. And my mother was both a Hex Maniac and a delinquent at separate points in her life. People change, grow, evolve. They're like magic, never static, always fluid, and not 100% predictable. I hope I've covered that question well enough. The second question I was asked was to tell you more about myself, my history, to be exact. I was born in Eckerteak in Johto. My family life was fairly complicated and not worth really going into, not unless you want to deal with all of that dramatic trauma. I liked to hang out around the kimono girls in the dance hall. They were gorgeous, and I wanted very much to be like them. When I was 10, one of them gave me an Eevee, and so I set out on my journey. The first thing I did was head straight for Mount Silver and the Indigo Plateau. The Kanto League was going to be happening in a few months, and I figured I had just enough time to travel there and watch it myself, earning money from battles along the way. It was pretty good training. Shade, my Eevee, and I fought a lot of trainers and caught lots of Pokemon on the way. I actually met Orion at that league. When I got there to buy my tickets, it turned out we had to sit next to each other, so it was just plain smart to make friends. He had an Eevee as well for his starter, so we traded tips and tricks. By the time the champion had been declared, we'd promised that we'd be fighting each other in the league next year, so we actually set off together to Kanto to challenge the gyms. It was a lot more fun having someone to travel with and face all of those hardships alongside of. I really enjoyed those days. 1 year later, I was 11, and we headed back to Indigo Plateau with our badges, hoping we'd fight each other. We actually ended up in the same bracket, and we fought each other in the second round. Orion won. His Eevee evolved into an Espeon mid-fight and completely annihilated me. Later that night, while I was beating myself up over losing and trying to train so I'd be even tougher next time, Shade evolved into an Umbreon. Orion found this hilarious. He had thought that maybe I wouldn't have lost if she'd evolved sooner. We decided to trade. The agreement was that even if I had lost, he'd take Shade all the way to the championship. He lost the next match. Defeated, we both set out for Johto, but while Orion was going for the gym challenge, I headed back home to Eckerteak to train under Morty and the Kimono Girls. I didn't face him again until I was 13, when I finally collected my badges and headed off to the Johto League. We'd traded friend codes and had kept in touch, and had agreed to a rematch then. We were in separate brackets this time, but we made it all the way through to the semifinals. It was an amazing battle, but it ended in a draw, a double knockout. All other Pokemon fainted. I decided then to drop out. Clearly, fate saw fit that I wouldn't fight him and win. We parted ways again there to travel on our own, but we kept in contact. Fate just kept us from running into each other again. My mother died, and I needed to go back home for a bit, and then his mother remarried, and he needed to go back home for a bit. And then my brother had some problems, and I needed to go back home. And then his sister had children. It was always something, so that we just kept missing each other. We actually didn't see each other again in person until we ran into each other in Unova. I think I had just turned 19 at the time. It wasn't long before we were traveling together again. And then shortly after, we were dating. We made a great double-paddled team. We knew each other very well, and our Pokemon were best friends the way we were with each other. I had raised his Umbreon from an Eevee. He had raised my Espeon just the same. We made a perfect team. After we challenged the gyms in Kalos, we got married in Luminos City. What could be more romantic than that? Not long after that, we moved back to my hometown of Eckerteak. We got a small house on the outskirts, and now we have 2 twin Meowth brothers and an Alolan Persian. For the most part, we just challenge trainers passing through, and I read fortunes and sell spells. I also do this. And that's pretty much the history of your favorite Hex Maniac. I had a childhood filled with battles and strife, hardships and loneliness, and then ultimately I fell in love with and married my best friend. A pretty boring story, if I say so myself. If you have any other questions for me, or need advice, then just ask your local monster to pass a message on to me. The ones under your bed and in your closet are your best bet. If you don't have one living there, then feel free to go to a friend's house and talk to their monsters. They're all generally pretty friendly. If anyone is still listening after that long rant about myself, it's time for our weekly spell. And this one is a craft project. We're going to be making a protection jar. They've also been called witches' jars. You can make them a lot of ways with a lot of different ingredients. Magic is flexible like that. The purpose of a protection jar is to act like a false you. If someone sends a curse or a malicious hex your way, the spell will be redirected to the jar and then turned back on the person who cast it. What you absolutely need for this project is, of course, a jar. Preferably one with a tight-fitting lid. You don't want the contents escaping once it's finished. Next, you'll want some fabric, probably in black or red, and some string as well. Candle wax is also a good thing to include, though you can just use a white candle here. White is always a good stand-in if you can't find any other color. What you'll want to do next is add bits of yourself to the jar, so that it will draw the negative spells directed at you. For this, you can use nail clippings, hair trimmings, spit. If you're comfortable with it, you can even add your own blood or urine. After that, you'll want to add old nails or screws to the jar. Pretty much anything sharp or nasty that you wouldn't want touching you. Rusty razors, broken glass. You can also take black string, knot it up into a complicated mess, and add that. The last thing you want to add is a liquid. If you've used your own urine, you're good here. If not, you'll need to add in something. I recommend collecting the rainwater from a thunderstorm. Try leaving a bowl out and then using that. You can also add vinegar, alcohol. If it smells foul and unpleasant, tip it right in. Just don't use bleach. We want to avoid bad chemical reactions. Once your jar is full, with about an inch below the threading, put the lid on it. Then take your cloth, cut down to roughly the size of your lid, and then tie that down over the top with your string. The final thing you want to do is to light the candle and drip wax over the lid. You want to make sure nothing can escape from this jar. Take your jar and find a place to hide or bury it where it won't be disturbed. From now on, it will draw ill will and bad spells to it instead of you. And the person directing those things at you will suffer the consequences of their casting. It's a pretty easy sort of magic to perform. You don't even need to say any words or direct any energy. The jar does all of the work. It's your intent when making it that ultimately shapes the spell. If this jar works for you, then please, send me a donation. It's only fair if you share a portion of your good fortune with me, after all. You can do this by making a coffee cake, soaking it with milk, and leaving it outside at night as an offering to the darkness. If you don't have the skills to bake a cake, then don't worry. Store-bought is fine. If you'd like a personalized spell or a message just for you, leave a note underneath the coffee cake. I'll get it. Remember, I do take commissions. If you'd like to sponsor this broadcast, then feel free to do so. I'll either write a commercial for you or read off whatever advertisement you'd like me to. Tune in later this week for a very creepy story about... I'm actually not sure yet. I haven't picked it out. It will, however, be chilling. Thank you again for taking the time out of your night to make me a part of your life. Sleep tight, gentle listener, and happy hauntings.